This video is about 3 changes the Pistons must make now that the league is actually taking them seriously. But before I do, this video is brought to you by Bridges and Stone's Family and Relationship Care. You know, the holidays can be tough for a lot of us, whether it's distance from family, relationship issues, social isolation, or struggling to adapt to the weather of this season. Depression and loneliness can get to us all. This season doesn't have to be something to dread. It can also be your opportunity to learn coping skills and the steps you need to move into healthier relationships. Contact Bridges and Stones today for a free consultation with a professional coach to get the support you need. Don't struggle alone. The link is in the description box below. So I've said this many times. In the NBA, it is a long grind marathon of a season. And for a lot of teams, as much as they circle games that they get up for, they also kind of unconsciously circle games that they're just like, I don't care. You know, it's almost like being in school and you're taking a class and you know you have large exams, you got finals, you got midterms, right? You have the projects. But then there's those like random homework assignments that just nobody wants to do. And that's what the Detroit Pistons have been for the past few years. And for a lot of teams, they've been able to get away with not preparing for this team. They can go in there and just rely upon a bunch of turnovers from the Pistons and some way, you know, as they say, losing teams figure out a way to lose. And it would happen. Unfortunately for them, this season, the Detroit Pistons, under new management, now have a competent coach, JB Bickerstaff. They've brought in some shooting. They've got some guys who want to compete. They're healthy-ish. And they have been able to catch a lot of teams off guard. They actually got to a really pretty good record. They was in the playoff hunt. They were one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. And a lot of teams were looking up at them. And there came a certain point that teams recognized that they were looking up at them. The Pistons, the team that they used to be able to unconsciously be like, I ain't got to worry about that. All of a sudden, that's exactly what the thing that they have to worry about. That's the difference between them getting a passing grade and a not passing grade. And now you can't play on the team because you didn't get at least a C, right? Like that's what they have become. And so now when teams come into the Detroit Pistons arena, when the Pistons come into their arena, they know that they have to get up for this game. They know that they're going to have to play because JB Bickerstaff and the Detroit Pistons now know how to win. They have a formula, moving the ball around, playing hard-nosed defense, a lot of hustle, a lot of effort, flying up and down the court. They are going to do the things it takes to win night in and night out. So if you do not bring your A game, at least your B plus game, I'm not going to say A game yet. They're not exactly like the Boston Celtics or the Cleveland Cavaliers and stuff like that. They're still kind of the middling team, but middling but good enough to beat you if you ain't on your P's and Q's, if you know what I mean. So now the Pistons need to make the next adjustment. And these are 3 things that they need to do now that the league is taking them seriously. The first thing, it's time to move on from Tim Hardaway Jr. Look, hey, it was nice while it lasted. We knew we were trading for him. I didn't like the trade. See my past videos. I didn't like the trade at all. It's worked to an extent. But I told y'all there was a reason why the Dallas Mavericks were giving him up for Quentin Grimes. There was a reason why he was out of the lineup. Sorry, not just out of the lineup last season going into the playoffs. He was not seeing the court. He was so far down the pecking order. There was a reason why they were not worried about letting him go. And there was a reason why they wanted Quentin Grimes. Because Quentin Grimes is very much so like Dante DiVincenzo. Yes, he could hit a lot of threes, but that's not necessarily telling all that he brings to the floor. Quentin Grimes gets to the rim, but even more so than that, he can be a facilitator. He's a dog on defense. He knows where to be. High basketball IQ, great feel, and his competitiveness is just everything you want. And now he's starting for a Dallas Mavericks team that is trying to move up the Western Conference ladder back into their contention position. All that's to say is Tim Hardaway Jr. has been a guy that has fallen out of favor on almost every team he's been on, from the Atlanta Hawks to the New York Knicks to the Dallas Mavericks and now the Detroit Pistons. And we're beginning to see why. That he's somewhat of a one-trick pony. At 6'5", he can shoot. Sometimes. Talk about streaky. He is the epitome of streaky. But he gets colder than most and longer than most. All that's to say is, at this point, he's cold. And not only is he cold, but at 6'5", he's a liability on defense. He's a liability. And when you're not hitting your shots and you can't lock down on the perimeter and you're not doing much else, you're not facilitating, you're not getting a bunch of assists, you're not rebounding at a high rate, you're not getting a bunch of steals, you're not producing in other ways to help the team win, it's time for the Pistons to move on. And Ausar Thompson's return is not a moment too soon. I think that is a simple transition for this team, is to drop Tim Hardaway Jr. down. He might lightweight be out of the rotation because if you've got Malik Beasley, Marcus Sasser is starting to ball out, and then you got Ron Holland, you're not going to knock Ron Holland down, even though he needs to grow up a little bit, and I'm going to get into a video on that soon enough. But even though he needs to grow up, he's still learning. It's his learning curve, and his talent and his long-term outlook means that he is more justifiable for playing time and learning through these growing pains than trying to fit Tim Hardaway Jr. in. Considering that you still got Simone Fontecchio, who's starting to come on, right? He started off cold, much like Tobias Harris, and then now he's picking it up and his shot is falling. And he's able to play better defense. So at 6'8", 6'9", Simone Fontecchio gives you a whole lot more than the 6'4", 6'5", Tim Hardaway Jr. It's time to move on. The second thing, it's time to insert Ausar Thompson into that starting lineup and build around the core. Look, he's a major part of the future for this team, and he deserves to be featured. I think we all learned from last season with Monty Williams. It doesn't matter how many qualms you have around your young talent that you just drafted. It doesn't matter how many, questions and uncertainties and inconsistencies you play them, because they're far more in alignment with the direction of this team than guys who might be more experienced, guys who might be able to play a little bit cleaner, and yet that's not going to get you to where you're trying to go. Tim Hardaway Jr. is not getting you to where you're trying to go. Ausar Thompson, however, is getting you exactly where you're trying to go, especially when you consider how they've lost a whole slew of games where the number one scorer of the other team is able to get off in such a tremendous way, whether it was Zach LaVine or Franz Wagner. These guys are playing at a level that we know. We've seen it last season. When you stick Ausar Thompson on them, it's curtains for them. And if it's not curtains, it's a hard night. There's no way they're dropping 15 plus points in a quarter. There's no way that they're hitting 6 or 4 threes in a row in one quarter, right? Ausar Thompson is locking that up. So he needs to get inserted into the starting lineup. That's definitely number 2. Number 3, they need to feature Marcus Sasser more as a 6th man. Look, I love Malik Beasley and what he's been able to do so far as much as the next guy. I appreciate how he's fit in. I appreciate how he's been consistent. I appreciate how he figures out ways to contribute even when he's struggling a little bit. But he's not Marcus Sasser. Not just because Marcus Sasser is younger and has the opportunity to be a part of this team's future core, but because Marcus Sasser does more for you on the court. His ability to get to his spots off the bounce, whether it's all the way to the rim, whether it's to his mid-range, he has a far larger and more extensive shot package than a Malik Beasley. And so what he's able to give you is that shot creation that Malik Beasley doesn't really give you. Malik Beasley will give you threes and straight line drives to the rim at best. Marcus Sasser is the type of guy you can give the ball in the half court and ask him to run some pick and roll and get Isaiah Stewart involved and pick and roll and kick out and find Simone Fontecchio. can also get to the rim, keep his dribble alive, come through on the opposite side, and then run action on that side. He's the type of guy you could say, hey, get us a bucket. We're actually bleeding right now. The other team's going on a run. Get us a basket. Get us a good look. Get to the free throw line. And he can do it. He's probably one of the few guys on this team whom you can toss the ball and say, go get me a bucket. And so Marcus Sasser needs to not just be a throw-in as he's kind of been, but he needs to be featured. He should probably be your first or second guard off the bench. Hey, you got Cade, you got Ivy. Okay, cool. Malik Beasley comes in. Marcus Sasser should be right there with him. But as always, I want to know what you all think. What do you think the adjustments that the Detroit Pistons need to make now that the NBA is seeing them more and playing them a whole lot tougher than they've ever been played probably over the last 3-4 seasons? Get at me in the comment section. I look forward to continuing the discussion with you there. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'm out. Peace.